Welcome to the Beyond Sundays podcast. I am the host, Brett Stewart, and back with me today is Josh Fanolio.
I'm back again.
He's back again. Man, I just wish I had a crowd cheering button that I could press because I know, Josh.
I was thinking that this wasn't very welcoming.
I'm so sorry.
Some fan noise.
I'm so sorry I disappointed you. But I know that if there was a crowd, they would cheer for you. They would go wild.
Yeah.
But we are here for part 2 of our episode that we released last week. And again, I'm just excited about this conversation, where it's going to lead to, no matter if you're a millennial, a young adult, or whether you're some other generation. I think that there's helpful and healthy stuff in it for all of us. But Josh, remind the people why you are excited about this conversation, why you are excited about this millennial generation stepping up into leadership roles within the church and the community.
Yeah. Man, it boils down to the church is ready for you.
Yeah.
You are an anointed individual for this time and place. And so the church is waiting for you guys to come and to step into your roles and your leadership and your giftings so that we can all partake in what that is.
Yeah. Your time is now.
Yep.
You know, I think back, our millennial generation dreams really well. We envision things that people tell us aren't possible. I think we're stuck. Some of us are still stuck in the dreaming phase of it. And the Lord is showing us our time is now, for such a time as this. And that doesn't mean that we stop dreaming, but it means that we step out and we start to lead. Just like Josh said, the church is ready for you. We are ready for you. And in fact, the church needs you. Yeah. So we're excited for the rest of this conversation today. So let's go ahead and finish it out. I want to shift a little bit to, it sounds like we're dogging on millennials. We are millennials. I think we're just way more aware of our own problems. And so We're trying to be honest and vulnerable in talking about it. But I do want to kind of shift and focus on things that millennials are good at, what they're passionate about, and then how can we, no matter what age you are, no matter what role of leadership you're in, how can we encourage, invite, and empower young adults and millennials to lead and to serve? Because it's never just a one-sided thing. Relationship is a two-way road, and so we've got to look at that. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit about things that millennials are good at. So I don't know. Either one of y'all can jump in, but what do you see that the young adult generation is really good at?
Before I was preparing for this, and I called my grandmother, who is, sorry, Tutu, in her 80s. I'll say that.
There you go.
And she's a wonderful woman of God. I've gone to her so many times for advice and biblical literacy. And I just asked her about this, kind of read through the notes, read through the questions. And one of the things that we discussed was that millennials, and she agreed with this, are one of the kindest generations, and open-armed and open-hearted to bringing people in and accepting them. And maybe we go too far on that. If you'll look around at our culture, I think you'll see that. But that is when you're talking about building the kingdom, that is a winning combination.
Yeah.
Kindness and open arms and open hearts. And she totally agreed. My grandmother, she said, as far as she's watching, me and my cousins that are millennials parent. And she said, y'all are the kindest generation of parents that I have ever seen. From her parents to when they parented to when my parents parent. She's seen quite a few generations. Yeah. Walk through parenting, and she was just saying, sometimes it swings the other way with a lack of discipline and that kind of stuff. But she said, I just see such loving kindness extended to children, and to one another, and it just breaks my heart. It would be such a tragedy. It breaks my heart to think that we would have those gifts and not use them to build the church and not use them to build the kingdom.
Yeah, and even just the community too. church, kingdom, and community. Like, I have such a heart for Abilene. And it's like, I want to be part of what God is doing here, not just in the church, like not just in the spiritual realm, but like I want to be part of what's happening in the community. And so, yeah, I'm hurting the community when I'm not giving myself and my love and my service to them. Josh, what about you? What are some things that you see that are positives, that are strengths about the young adults, about millennial generation?
I think that I see a lot of hunger in that generation.
Oh, yeah.
And so it hasn't translated into the church and where they are going, but it's going to come. And so, hopefully this is a spark to any of that, but just I see a hunger in them for the desire to have a place and to be able to lead and be able to go after Jesus. I think they do it well in the groups that we have at Beltway. Like, they love the Lord and they want to help the people within that group. So I think it's just a matter of how do we get that, what they do a lot of times in a smaller community, how do we get that to the bigger church and the bigger community maybe. But yeah, they're hungry and they're in their secret place going after the Lord. And so I'm ready for God to help unleash who they are and what they're ready for.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's such a hunger, and I think there's even such an ability to dream of something that, what was previously thought as impossible or incapable. Like, our generation is like, oh, we could do that. Mm-hmm. Like, we could do that. I mean, I tell my wife a lot in conversations, like, my parents literally told me I could be anything I wanted to be, and I believed them. And in doing so, like, I mean, I feel like I said yes to the things that I wanted to do, and I excelled at them because I believed that I could do them. And so we are hungry. I think we do have an imagination and an ability to dream of something that's beyond ourselves or what any one person is capable of. But when we do come together and we dream about it, I think we haven't quite seen it yet. But this idea of when we do come together, what's possible of achieving and creating and bringing and building. And that goes along with, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, millennials, young adults want to work towards something that's bigger than any just one person or one simple role. And that does hinder us from saying yes to just very simple ways of loving and serving. But the positive of that is we have a hunger for something so much more. I know a lot of people give millennials a hard time about wanting so much freedom, but what we can see in the millennial generation, the young adults, is like, when you do actually give them a space, when you do give them some freedom, they own something and they run with it and they make it theirs. And so the desire is to not be micromanaged, but believed in and empowered. And so kind of as we move towards finishing this and wrapping it up, how can we, as the millennial generation, but also anyone listening who is older than the millennial generation, how can we create opportunities that invite young adults into them to be empowered, to own something, to dream with it, and it be an expression of love and service towards others for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of the church, for the sake of community? So how can we do that? How do we do that with our friends? How do we do that with our young adult community here at this church or the churches in Abilene? It's a big question.
It is a big question. One of the things, just speaking to millennials right now that are like right on that cusp of like, what do I do? Like, I know it's time to take a step, but what do I do? And I think one of the things you can do is, as I was looking for verses for this, I looked at like Romans 12, and like it's almost the whole chapter of like, what is the body and being confident in your spiritual gifts. And I would read over that and do some praying and get in a serious conversation with God about what do you need me to do? Yeah. Because I think we're feeling a little what's next?
Yeah.
Rubber hits the road. What do I do now? But I do think it's going to take to build community to get plugged in and be a real impactful part of community in the church. It's going to take not being afraid to be vulnerable, but also not being afraid to ask others and yourself hard questions.
Yeah.
Like, here's all my stuff. Here's where I'm weak. Here's where I'm struggling. And ask other people to do the same.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about like in your community groups, in your family. Because when you break down those walls of I'm not perfect, I'm not trying to fix myself, then you open up trust and you can actually build those communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as other, like, making millennials feel welcome, the fact is we are welcome, but I think if we're waiting around for like an invitation, like, come on in, like, we want you here, that would be great, but you may not get that.
Yeah.
They do want you there. And the fact is, God has commanded us to be there.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like 50-50, like, well, I'll come this far, and maybe they'll come the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But it may be more than that. Maybe you have to go 90% of the way and just say, hey, I'm here. Here's where I think I should be serving. Do you need help in kids ministry? Do you need help on the prayer team? What do I need to do?
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes to all.
We do need this.
What? I would like to try this. What do I need? What are the steps?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? And get active in that area. As far as what we can do, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what I would ask of the older generations. Like, I think, I don't know what I would ask of them.
I think I would ask them in their ask of millennials and young adults to step into places. Just give them a little, like, a mission, vision for it. Just tell them the why. Our generation is kind of obsessed with this idea of why. I know what you're asking me to do or what you're telling me to do. I want to know the why. And if we can get better at articulating that, I think that it offers opportunity for people to believe in, like, okay, I can get behind that purpose. I can get behind that mission. I'm all in. And so maybe start communicating the why. But you said something, Teagie, that it got me thinking. They might not just come out and verbatim audibly say, like, we want you. But I did some research before we did this podcast, and most of the stuff I found on millennials was about other generations talking about how to attract millennials. And the thing is they desire us to be here. They want to empower the next generation, and they're struggling with, are we doing something wrong? It doesn't seem like we're connecting very well. So I would argue, and go talk to anybody older than you, I think that they want to see you empowered and to be the next leaders in the country, in the community, in the world, in the church.
In your school system.
In your school system. Like, they actually want that and believe that, but maybe they haven't just articulated it perfectly to say, hey, millennials, we want you and we need you. They're trying to communicate that. They're praying. Their desires are for that. And so I would just challenge any young adults out there that people's hearts are probably more for you than you actually realize, than we actually realize. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, there is a place for everyone in the church. There's a reason and a season in everything. And so it's just a matter of raising your hand and saying, I'm in. I want to be a part. Like, Brett and I, as pastors of Beltway, are extending an invitation right now. This is
Here
your
it is,
invitation.
if you're waiting for it.
Yeah, you can
Here
go
it
to
is.
beltway.org/serve, or you can you can literally find one of our spiritual gifts tests, or just Google spiritual gifts test. Figure out
That test is really good.
Yeah, figure out how you're equipped, what you're equipped with, and then start using it. Again, it might not be your dream job or dream role of using all that you have and all that you are, but also you need practice using it and refining it. I have to confess, I am not as good as I think I am at all things. Like, if I were to talk to my younger self, I would look at him like, oh, you arrogant fool. You think you know everything. And now I tell people jokingly, it's like the older I get, the more I learn that I know very little. And
That has a lot of wisdom in it, Brad.
That's true
Yeah.
of everyone as they get older. They're like, okay, I was so wrong.
Yeah. And so the millennial generation isn't the first generation to experience this. We all have. Some of it is just being young, ambitious people with gifts trying to find their place. It's not, again, hear me, it's not just the millennial generation. I think every generation has probably been at this point. But yeah, there is an open invitation. Find out your gifts. We will help you find your gifts, and then look for places to just start and say yes and use those gifts. I'll kick it back to you because I kind of took over, Josh. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you finished what I was going to say. But,
Okay.
I know in my role as young adults pastor, I'm ready to meet you and I'm ready to engage with you. I want to know what you have and what God has been preparing you for. And I think it will look different. So if you're like, I don't really like what they are doing or agree with it or whatever the reason is, like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Right.
God's new.
Right.
God has something new. So if you are part of the proponent of change that we need as the church, but you are not willing to come in and say hello to me, like, you got to do it. Now's the time. Step up, come in, let's have a conversation, and let's go after what God has for our church because it's our season.
Yeah. And I think, too, anyone who's stuck in that place, and Teagie articulated it well, knowing that there needs to be a shift or a change or something that happens, the joy that comes from serving, the joy that comes from saying yes to others, the joy that comes from giving and not just receiving, I think you're going to fall in love with that joy.
Yes.
Like, my wife and I love to say yes to people and make time for people. We will sacrifice our sleep. We will sacrifice our food. We will sacrifice our budget. We will sacrifice whatever we need to say yes to people that we love and that we care for. And there's a joy that comes in that. And I know that for me, I mean, I've been a pastor. This is literally my 13th year I'm finishing up of being a pastor. But even outside of that, just in serving roles or going on mission trips or trying to practice growing in my generosity, the joy that comes from giving of what God has given to me, it's a pretty powerful thing. I mean, we have this abundant God who gives generously. So therefore, when we start to give generously, we line up with him and we experience the joy in the life that comes in that. And so,
Can I comment on something?
yes, you
Okay.
can comment as long as it doesn't contradict anything that I say or challenge me. I'm kidding.
How millennial of you. Triggered.
Triggered.
I really agree with what you just said, and I think one of the things that maybe we as millennials have gotten stuck in is at least I'm not kind of thinking. Like, because our generation and our culture has stepped so far away from God as, like, it's not cool and it's not talked about and it's not in our shows anymore and it's not wherever. It's kind of absent from our culture that maybe we feel like we're doing a good job. Like, well, at least I'm a Christian. At least I believe in God. At least I'm attending. And I think that's great. I'm glad you're attending, and I'm glad that you're a Christian and you found a church home or you're plugged in somewhere. But, you know, God asks a lot of his people. I think it was Luke 12:48 for to whom much is given, much is I'm paraphrasing, but much is required. Yes. And so the standard is higher than at least I'm a Christian, you know, and good for you. And my mother-in-law said something like that. I'm so happy that you and Roy are, you know, walking this path, and just know that, like, that's that older generation reaching out and saying, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
We're happy you're here, but the standards are high.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with what you say. You will find so much joy and so much fruit in serving and being there and being a part of a community. But the truth is, that's not the reason that we serve, and that's not the reason that we do that.
Right.
The reason is because God commands it of us.
Yeah.
And the byproduct of it is that joy and that fruit.
There's reward.
And there is
from
reward.
obedience.
There's reward from obedience. And it's like that thing I think that's gotten really popular, and I think our generation loves this, is you should forgive them because you'll feel so much better after you forgive them. And that's true, you will. But that's not why we forgive them.
Yeah.
And that is a broader statement into when we follow the commands that are laid out in Scripture.
Yeah.
God does give reward, and you're going to feel great, and you're going to have joy, and you're going to see fruit in that. But the reason that we obey is because we love God, and He has set out what is good for us in His Word.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much joy in life that comes from obedience, and I think God purposefully made it a byproduct that joy in life is produced, so that it's like, okay, yeah, we'll keep doing this. I mean, there is blessing in obedience, and the Lord does it because when we align most with who He is and how He functions, I mean, that's our created, intended purpose. And so, of course, we find life in it because we're aligning with His life. Yeah. This has been a great conversation. We got to wrap up. There's so many different podcast episodes that could come off of this, and so I hope that we do that. But Teagie, Josh, thank you so much, and appreciate this time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, thanks again for listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast and this part 2 episode with Teagie McBeth and just our conversation about the millennial generation. Young adults in this season right now. I believe in them so much. It is my generation, and I am excited and eager to see them step up into those leadership roles within the community and within the church. There is something powerful on this generation, and our time is now. There is an anointing on every generation, and I believe that wholeheartedly, and I love getting to see it in generations older than me, but also the generations behind me to come, Generation Z and so on. I'm excited to already get to see glimpses of what God is doing, the anointing and the mantle that He has put on each generation. So thank you again for listening to both of these episodes, and we're excited to see what God does. Help be part of the kingdom of God invading this earth and invading the church and invading our community. Be sure to hit that like, follow, or subscribe button, depending on the platform that you're listening to this podcast on, so that you can stay up to date with the latest episodes we release every Tuesday. Go ahead and follow Beltway Park Church on social media. That handle is @BeltwayPark across all platforms. And we encourage you, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, Beltway Park Church, so that you can stay up to date with the sermons and the teachings and the testimony videos that we release all the time. We hope you have a great week. Be blessed. And remember, God is moving in your life beyond Sundays.